Hey, I got a question for you. Do you know what you need to look for when hiring a bookkeeper? Sometimes, most of our clients, when they come to us asking this advice, um, they normally think like, "Hey, I know somebody that's good at math, or I know somebody who works in finance, or I know somebody who works for the IRS." And truth be told, just because they might be familiar with those environments does not necessarily mean that they have the skills to be a bookkeeper for your business. So I'm Sonja Jones of GFP Financials, your Mr. Miyagi of money, and we help entrepreneurs know their numbers. But for this context, I am the host of the From Chaos to Clarity Unleash Your Business Potential podcast. And on this podcast, we talk to entrepreneurs who have transformed their businesses by taking ownership of their numbers and learning from their trusted financial experts how to grow and scale their business by looking at their financial reports in the light. In this episode, we are talking to Mrs. Katherine Anthony of Med Access Med Staffing Solutions Healthcare, and she's going to walk us through her journey of finding an entrepreneur, a bookkeeper, as her business started to grow. Because guess what, y'all? As you start, of course, you're going to have to learn what you need to do to organize your books. But as you begin to grow, you have to start delegating things, right? And being honest with yourself about, hey, one thing I'm not going to do is mess these books up, right? So she's going to walk us through her experience in finding the bookkeeper for her business. And then I'm also going to be adding some little gems in there to include what things you should be looking for and the questions you should be asking. All right. And then also, if you are an entrepreneur who currently has a bookkeeper and you're looking to find another bookkeeper, we're also going to be talking about that as well. All right. So I hope you got some pencil and paper. If not, you can pause it right here, go get your pencil and paper, come back, and we'll be ready to talk about hiring your bookkeeper. All right, y'all. Let's get to it. Welcome, y'all, to the From Chaos to Clarity podcast. I am your host, Sonja Jones of GIP Financials, your Mr. Miyagi of Money. And we are here today to talk about, all things knowing your numbers, right? And I love to bring on entrepreneurs so you guys can hear, right, the ebbs and flows, the joys and sorrows of knowing your numbers, because it is a journey. I don't like to sugarcoat it at all. And so today I have a beautiful, beautiful person that I've known for quite a long time. This is Katherine Bell Anthony, who is the owner of Access Med Staffing Solutions Healthcare. And so I want to let y'all know that when it comes to entrepreneurship, you never know how those relationships are going to come back together. And so in my former life, I was an elementary music teacher here in Memphis. And that's how I met Miss Anthony, because I taught not only her son, but her nephew, and just, taught the family, right? And once I became a school administrator, we actually partnered with her during the pandemic with nursing solutions for our school. So, Miss Anthony, welcome so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. That was an amazing introduction. And right back to you, Miss Sonia. Miss Sonia's like family, and she's definitely a trusted partner and friend. So I appreciate you having me today.
Absolutely, absolutely, my pleasure. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started with our conversation. So, Miss Anthony, if you could tell us how you got started with Access Med Staffing Solutions
So
Healthcare.
it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to give you the short of it. I was at a workshop at my church, and actually, I was pregnant with my second child. And there was a person there who heard me. We were talking about visions and wanting to have businesses and that kind of thing. And so she actually heard me say that I wanted to start a healthcare business. And so let's fast forward probably about 2 months later. She was at her private job, and her medical staffing didn't show. And she basically called me on the phone and she said, Catherine, have you started your business? And so I'm thinking, well, I didn't want to lie, but I was thinking, well, yes, in my heart, I have, yes, what do you need? And she, went ahead and told me what she needed, and that really birthed. We were Med Staffing Solutions at the time, and we had a name change, Access Med Staffing Solutions Healthcare. So we've been in business now about 16 years. We staff private events or centers, conventions. We do school staffing, home care, pretty much you name it, we can do it. I have LPNs, RNs, paramedics, EMTs. I'm a registered nurse myself by education. And so that's pretty much how we got started.
Wonderful. I always love to hear the stories about how businesses came to be. And hey, y'all, all it is really simple. You just have to be the answer to somebody's problem. And as you can hear with Miss Anthony about the nursing solutions, although God put it in her heart to have it, that was one thing, but then just to solidify, the need for it, right? It was like right there, just kind of dropped in there. Even when she, wasn't formally prepared, she got the signal like it's go time, right? And so that's exactly what you
Absolutely.
have to do. Go ahead, Miss
Absolutely. And
Anthony.
I was just going to say, when God gives you that vision, act on it. Sometimes we sit on things, and I heard a speaker say recently that some of the brightest ideas are in the graveyard because those dreams and ideas died with them. So if the Lord put something in your heart, step out, find a mentor, um, pray and ask God to lead and guide on what you need to do and how you.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So we're gonna keep on moving. So when you first started Access Med Staffing Solutions, and I know you said you had a name change, but of course we all have to start somewhere, and you had to make sure that you took care of those books. Because from what I hear, because you were basically a staffing agency, right? You started off with payroll, right?
Absolutely. And I'll say this, I started off with payroll, but some of those shifts, because I am a registered nurse, I did myself so that I could minimize the high cost of payroll. And I also called in a few friends, Miss Sonia, and I said, hey, y'all, they trusted me. I said, hey, we may not get paid for 2 or 3 weeks. I might not be able to pay, but will you come do this for me? And we built those relationships, and they trusted me. And eventually I was able to pay them. But also, I maintained at that time, and I still maintain a full time job. So that was also a source to help me fund my business.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you heard that as well, y'all. So especially for those of you who still have full-time jobs, right? Don't just jump off the deep end, because especially if you have a family, you have to keep that in mind. And just as a shameless plug, because we do have a workbook that's called the Financial Freedom Roadmap. So for those of you guys who are thinking about full-time entrepreneurship, you need a plan, and then you need a plan on top of the plan on top of the plan on top of the plan, right? Because this is not for the faint at heart. And so before you transition into that, even if you're considering it, make sure that you get access to that free workbook, because it's going to bring out some things that you may not have considered. All right. So just you hope you're getting these nuggets today, right? You got to jump in, you got to have connections, you got to not only cultivate relationships, but how you treat people prior to will be significant in how you're able to move forward. Because you heard Miss Anthony say she had friends that knew her, right, and knew her character to know that, hey, I'm going to help her. We can delay compensation, but we believe so much in Miss Anthony that we want to help her in her vision in this particular way. So, Ms. Anthony, let's talk about the bookkeeping part of your business. So, when you started Access Med Staffing, how were you managing the bookkeeping?
Actually, when I started, I was self-managing, and my sister, she had a very profitable business, childcare business at one point in time, and she actually has a degree in accounting. So she was able to kind of lead and guide me and help me, but I had one account. So with that one account that I mentioned, that was my first account, and we still have that same account. It wasn't so hard to manage that. However, my nurses started asking, "Well, Catherine, when are we going to expand? We want more work. You need to do more." And it was, pressing. I felt the need to do more. And so as I launched out, and one client became 10 or more clients, that started to be a bit much for me to handle. So I knew at that point, and then my sister started saying, "Hey, you need to kind of look around and see if you can get somebody to keep your books. You're going to need a CPA and that kind of thing." I can remember one year doing the taxes, and they kept just asking me for this and that, and I was like, "I can't do it." And as I mentioned, I still work a full time job. So that's really when I knew that I was going to have to transition to a bookkeeper.
And so, yeah, man, when it comes to, starting a business, it's particularly tax is just like level one to this thing, right? We're not even talking about like trying to get funding and stuff like that, but just managing your bookkeeping just to maintain the compliance, right? For not just with your federal taxes, but for some of you guys that have businesses and you have state tax obligations also, right? That's why it's important for you to manage your books. But if you notice that Miss Anthony had, some wise counsel in her sister, right, that was also a successful entrepreneur that mentioned, like, hey, you need to make sure that you have a bookkeeper, right, to keep your books clean and things like that. So I'm grateful that you were able to have those resources there to, walk you through that process and that guidance. So I know you had mentioned a little bit because my next question was going to be, so when did you say enough is enough? Like taking your hands off. So you did talk about, the tax experience when the preparers were asking you for the documentation and things like that. And that seemed to be overwhelming. But were there any other experiences to where you was like, nope, can't do it. You got to find somebody else.
I would say it was more the when it came to tax time. Also, I applied for the PPP loan. And as you know, they were asking for a lot of information, financial, and that kind of thing. And again, just from my administrative roles that I have, I kind of knew a little bit. I just call it just God's wisdom. To I knew to keep that stuff in a safe place. So, but again, it was taxing, it was time consuming, and now it's just a matter of those books, that profit and loss or whatever statement going to my CPA. It's just a very smooth process to have everything in a system. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. And so let's talk about the process of you finding your bookkeeper. So once you made the decision that you were going to outsource this bookkeeping, can you walk us through kind of what you were thinking in your mind as far as like what your expectations were for the bookkeeper?
Absolutely. So, the first thing, it's just like anything I do. If I'm going to buy tires for my car, then I usually get three quotes, right? I might go to Sam's, Costco, and I just might look online to see what's out there. So it was the same thing with the business. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do bookkeeping, let me just try to find at least three vendors who offer these services, and let me tell them what I need. And I definitely needed somebody to reconcile my banking accounts. Um, I needed a profit and loss statement, and I needed to make sure that I was getting paid on time. Just tracking those things. So, and then I also wanted someone or an entity to kind of lead and guide me for those things that I didn't know. because again, being a nurse, sometimes we nurse so much that we forget about the business aspect of nursing or anything else. So I needed help there. And so those were some of the things that I looked for. And I took it up.
Good, good. So yeah, as far as just with the essentials, as with bookkeeping. So for those of you who are looking to outsource, if the baseline that your bookkeeper should be doing for you is one, if you don't have accounting software, they should be able to recommend some sort of software. Like I said, QuickBooks is not the only thing that's out there. However, it has to be something, one, that you're able, to at least go in. One, you have to have access. And I'll tell anybody that. So even if the bookkeeper is, providing those services for you, there should never be a time where you have to ask them for access to your account with your business numbers. That's number one, right? And then number two, they should be able to categorize your transactions from your bank account, reconcile, your bank account just to match whatever's on the statement to what's in the accounting software, and then provide the financial reporting. And at minimum, the profit and loss statement, because that's going to be the statement that you're going to need for your taxes. That's the primary report. Sometimes, depending on what you have and the type of business, the balance sheet will also be important. But primarily, the profit and loss is going to do that, for you, right? So good. All right. So once you got your quotes and you took a look at those quotes, you were looking at services, you were looking at pricing, and so just kind of walk us through your mindset when it was time to hand over the baton to the bookkeeper.
So I was a little nervous because again, that's a lot of information to hand over, and you haven't been in that space before. Um, but some of it fell on me as far as making sure that things were organized. Um, I would just say um, it was a little nerve wracking, but I was able to do it. And another thing I'll say, I did. I had some of my accounts that were not that I was kind of managing outside of. Well, I didn't have a platform. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting a little tongue tied on this one, Miss.
Good
Miss
time.
Sonia,
Take your time.
ask me the question again so that I want to make sure that I'm answering appropriately.
Absolutely. So, and I'll make sure that I restate it. Also, I'm gonna try to reframe it better. So, once you got your three quotes and you were comparing services and pricing, and you made a decision on one, right? There should have been some type of like intake process, right, or onboarding process for you with that bookkeeper. Can you kind of walk us through what that
Thank
process was
you.
like?
The onboarding process was
Mm-hmm.
me pulling reports for them, such as my bank statement. If
Mm-hmm.
I had a line of credit or any credit cards or anything associated with anything basically coming in and going out, they needed access to. So I was able to give them
Mm-hmm.
that. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Absolutely. Right. And the reason why I asked that is because that's I'm trying to support debunking a myth, because well, a lot of entrepreneurs think that just because they hire a bookkeeper, then they just give them what I call the box of receipts and say, here you go. And that's not the case, because you got to remember, your bookkeeper in most cases, you are not your bookkeeper's only client. And they're not going to assume anything when it comes to categorizing your income or expenses. That's still your responsibility. So there's still a partnership between you and the bookkeeper. So if you heard Miss Anthony, she was still responsible for sending them, the statements. And I'm pretty sure they probably within those statements were asking her about what this transaction was, and how do you want us to categorize, this income and things like that. And she has to be able to explain that. And then I'm pretty sure there was some talks that she was explaining. The bookkeeper was asking some more clarifying questions to be able to categorize it properly for tax time.
Absolutely. And that's ongoing. It's not just, you mentioned the onboarding, but every month. there's a set of reports that I have to provide by a certain time, from payroll to bank statements to, again, any credit cards, any lines of statement. They're trying to reconcile all of that information, and it's been a really good learning process for me, because some of it I just didn't know. I didn't understand it. Again, I didn't really want to do it, didn't want to see it. But really, with your business, is just like at your house. You need to know what's going out, what's coming in. That's just an extension of your personal uh, of your personal finances. So that is it's good to have somebody else helping, but like Miss Sonia said, it's certainly a partnership.
Hmm. Absolutely. And so we're going to segue going back to the partnership. So as you're, learning your bookkeeper and as your bookkeeper is learning you, right, time is going to pass. And because your bookkeeper also has a business, right, there are going to be some times where they're going to notify you about pricing adjustments, or maybe they're adjusting features, or they're adding staff and things of that magnitude, right? So change is inevitable. And as they are proposing those said changes, as the CEO of your business, you have to keep in mind, are these changes going to be beneficial to me, and how's it going to affect my bottom line? So, Miss Anthony, so as you at or let me ask two questions. So, how long have you been with your current bookkeeper? That's the first question. And then after that, can you talk about any of the adjustments that you had to work through with your bookkeeper, like pricing, staffing, features, and etc.?
Yes, I've been with the bookkeeping service now, I want to say 4 years. And yes, the pricing did increase recently because revenue increased. And I wasn't really happy about that increase, but when they gave me the rationale, and again, I also checked other vendors, they were really in line. And so yes, I mean that definitely changes, and it's such a an important piece of my business that what I started doing is just looking at some other areas that I could try to decrease instead of that one, because that one was just, it's really it's a high priority to have the finances done, to have those services. So that's one that, hey, I just have to deal with that one.
Right, exactly. So you brought up a very good piece of information. So with Miss Anthony's bookkeeper, they price based off your annual revenue.
That was
Is that what I heard?
it was I'm trying to see, was it it's not the annual revenue, it was the number, it was, I'm trying to see, was it the number of clients? Nope, it's like the quarter, I think it's the quarterly revenue that they're looking at. It's like, I'm just gonna say 5 to 10,000 is one price. Then if you go over 10,000, it's another price. I'm just throwing that number out there, for example.
Got
But yeah, that's what happens. So they do an average. So if it decreases and there's an average, it will go back down. But if it stays about what it is, it's not going to decrease. That's what I was told as to how they
got you. All right, so that's good to know. So just FYI, when you are, looking for bookkeepers, there's different ways that they price. So one way is going to be income, right? How much revenue you're bringing in. Two, and these are just the common ones that I've seen, the number of transactions that your business has. Um, Depending on, sometimes if you have like 4 or 5 different accounts, and that's, when I say accounts, those are accounts that have to be reconciled. So a checking account, a savings account, a credit card account, a line of credit. Um, if all of those, accounts average a certain amount of transactions per month, that they may have tiered pricing based on that. I know for us at GIP Financials, we originally were doing the transaction one, but once we noticed that folks weren't showing integrity about those transactions, right? And so once we had signed the engagement letter, then we just had to kind of, until the year came back around, we had to renegotiate, right? But the way we do it now, we price ours based off of the number of accounts we have to reconcile, regardless of the number of transactions. Because at the end of the day, every account has to be tended to, and reports have to be, structured based off of those accounts and stuff as well. And also, the type of accounting software that you have plays a difference also in that. So you got to be very, very aware of how those bookkeepers are pricing out, because it's so important. You got to compare apples to apples as much as you possibly can. Because what I also see a lot is, you know, entrepreneurs will come to us, not so much concerned about the features, but they're only concerned about the price. And just because, like, say you might have been paying hypothetically $500 a month with your current bookkeeper, and the other bookkeeper is charging you like 450 or 300, right? You just can't say, "Woo, see you later, y'all. I'm going with this cheaper person." You don't know what type of services they're providing, and then when you go with the other bookkeeper that might have been cheaper, they might not be providing. They might just be doing data entry. They might not be offering, the sit down meeting and the analysis with you, right? So you got to make sure that you're aware of those things, right? So, Miss Anthony, you teaching the people today, honey? You are teaching.
You are teaching me, Sonia. You're teaching me as well, as always, and I appreciate it. I really do. I'm always gaining knowledge every time I see you. So thank you.
Hey, entrepreneur, I know managing your books is overwhelming. You don't know where the numbers begin or where they end, which keeps you getting denied for grants and loans. Let's not forget the unexpected tax bills because you weren't aware of the tax deductions. So if you're thinking whether or not to close your business just because you can't find anyone that you trust to help you with your bookkeeping, you're not alone. 70% of entrepreneurs don't have a financial expert, and of that 70%, 64% admit to not knowing the basics. I'm Sonja Jones with GIP Financials, and I'm here to invite you to our online community, GIP Academy. So, what is GIP Academy? It's affordable access to bookkeeping experts. For only $97 a month, you'll receive our online library of webinars, monthly live teaching with other experts, and quarterly one on one support. It's a safe space for entrepreneurs to talk about money and get the answers you need to make your business profitable. So, if you're ready to know your numbers, if you're ready to get approved for funding, and most importantly, if you're ready to finally pay yourself from your business, click the link in the description below to join our waitlist and get updates before the October 1st launch. I look forward to partnering with you. Let's get it. We talked about how you started doing the bookkeeping yourself. You started looking around to, shop around for bookkeepers. You talked about your experience and how to cultivate, that relationship. And so now that you have that relationship, and even you talking about, as the bookkeeper was adjusting, their prices and features, you shopped around again. And then you noticed that the pricing was and the features are pretty much in market, right? Which is great. So you're just like, I'm just gonna stay put right here. So let's talk about the benefits, of having your bookkeeper. And come up to the mic a little bit more because you
Okay. Can you hear me
you
okay?
come you're fading out on
Okay.
me.
Can you hear me okay?
All right. There you
Okay.
go. You're doing
Great.
good.
Okay.
All right. So the question is, with your current bookkeeper, what are the benefits of having that outsourced assistance? How's that helping you in your function as CEO for Access Med Staffing?
Well, it opens up my schedule for other tasks. I don't have to worry about my CPA calling for something. Again, like you said, I can get into it. I can see what they're doing. It also helps me to plan because I can look at that profit and loss and kind of know where do I need to go next month or the next 2 or 3 months. are we doing okay, or do I need to scale back, or what's really going on here? So it's a tool
Mhm.
for me to really gauge how we're doing. It helps me with my budget. It helps me with cash flow as well to know, what's coming in, because trying to keep all these accounts in my head is just not feasible with everything with everyday life. So those are
Right.
some of the things I would say. Mainly, it gives me time back, and then it helps me to plan, to know whether I need to scale back, or maybe we need to grow a little bit, or maybe we just need to be still. So it's a really good planning tool for me.
I love it. I love it. So you heard it here first, y'all. Miss Anthony's she's teaching today. So being able to delegate, and I'll just say this too, as far as just the blanket rule of delegation, whether it's bookkeeping, marketing, social media, any of that, you got to know as the owner, right, what you need assistance with. And I'll say it at any time. Every business needs a bookkeeper or somebody overseeing the financial progress of your business. That's a non-negotiable, right? So you got to make sure that you have that. But also when it comes to the delegation part, what I'm still learning as an entrepreneur is that value based, right, pricing, because our time is a significant asset. And so if you're thinking about it from a price standpoint for your time, if you're trying to do your own books, right? How much time is it taking you to do those books? Where Miss Anthony was saying she could take that same time and focus on revenue generating activity, trying to find some high quality nurses to help, or connecting with prospective clients, right? That's going to bring in more revenue than trying to do these books. So it would make sense revenue wise to bring in somebody and delegate that task, right? So you guys got to be thinking about that at all times, especially our CEOs, right? Because your time is the most valuable.
Absolutely.
So I love
And
that.
I think
Go ahead, Miss Anthony. Were you about to say something else?
also, Miss Sonia, again, the financial part, the bookkeeping is not necessarily my strong suit. And while I might be able to do it, it's going to take me a lot longer to do it than it would you or one of your associates. So I can keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we got a couple more questions. And so I know, let's talk a little bit about accounting software, just a little bit. So, so can I say you use QuickBooks, and that's a platform that we endorse. So I want you to, Miss Anthony, talk to us about the pros and cons of QuickBooks based on your experience.
It's been the only software that I've used. So let me just start by saying that. Uh, the cons, I don't know, except the pricing to me is a little, but it really does everything that I needed to do. I'll be honest. It You can do payroll in it. You can do you have your bookkeeping, your CPA can tap in. All of my clients, as far as billing and keeping up, they can pay there. You can do a checking account with QuickBooks and eliminate some of those fees. So QuickBooks has been amazing for me. Now, maybe had I been on a different platform, I would have something to compare it to. But just comparing from me doing it to things being organized in QuickBooks, I love it, Miss Sonia. So I don't really have any cons, unless maybe if you bring something up, I can agree or not agree. But at this point in time, it's working well for me and for the business.
I love that. So at the beginning, when you first accessed QuickBooks, did it seem a tad bit overwhelming, or how did you walk yourself through that
They
process?
have so many tutorials. So I did take time to look at the tutorials. Again, my sister was a QuickBooks Pro. So she kind of gave me a crash course. Um, and from there, I've just kind of learned along the way, because, my CPA might ask me for something. I've learned how to go in there and get that profit and loss. Or if I'm applying for business, or for a line of credit or something, I have to know how to pull those reports. And everything is so self-explanatory. Now, it was a little learning curve initially, I'll be honest, because again, I'm one, don't hit me with the financial, the books. Just give me the nursing stuff. But I've come a long way. I might be a strong C plus now. Whereas when I started, I was probably maybe a D minus or an F. I wasn't good at all with it. So, but they have a lot of tutorials. They're willing to work with you. Again, my sister has been a really good assistant, and I'm very grateful for her and her help.
I love it. I love it. And so, just to go back and just recap some of the things that you mentioned. So, as far as QuickBooks, if you know that QuickBooks is one of the companies that's under Intuit, right? And so, it's all you also get TurboTax, and I think it's what's the other thing? Quicken and stuff like that. Those are under, into it. And I would definitely say, as far as maybe some of the challenges, is that they do have, I would consider frequent, pricing adjustments. And some of the features, make sense. Some of them don't. I know from an accounting standpoint, I know a lot of our accountants is just like, we love QuickBooks, but we just cannot stand, because a lot of the customers are coming to them about what's going on with QuickBooks and why the prices keep going up, right? Depending on how those bookkeepers are pushing those fees through, if they're including that in their monthly charges and stuff like that. So I definitely can understand that on your side and on our side. But as far as like one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, is QuickBooks, because I say it all the time. Every business may not be ready for QuickBooks at the beginning, but as you grow and scale, you're gonna have to come this way, because at the end of the day, all the other accounting softwares just don't have that feature of the all in one, right? And then the report, from the reporting standpoint, oh, it doesn't get any better than QuickBooks, because you can customize, and they have reports that just the other softwares just don't have. And then, just like what Miss Anthony said, with the tutorials, like every feature that they have a video for it. Um, and then also payroll. You can file your 1099s. You can set up your sales tax in there. I mean, sky's the limit. And you do have fairly, proficient support in that as well. So that's just the benefit of having, good accounting software. But also, here's another thing: as you're shopping around, you make sure that your bookkeeper, one, has clients that are in your industry. Sorry to ask them that. And then two, ask them the platforms that they support. Because like I said, we endorse QuickBooks, right? And then for those of our entrepreneurs that may not be ready for QuickBooks, we have what we call the DIY tracker, which is a formula-based spreadsheet that our accounting manager created. We don't necessarily, endorse the other ones, to be quite honest, because most of our folks are already, either they have QuickBooks already, or they probably need a more simpler solution, right? And the DIY tracker also has the profit and loss, the balance sheet, the cash flow, and some other data that will help you plan, right? So just like what Miss Anthony said, that reporting is going to be critical, because your bookkeeper should not only help you, walk you through how to access the software, but how to access those reports and tell you what you should be looking for, right, within those reports, so you'll be able to plan accordingly, like what Miss Anthony said. And I forgot to mention accounts receivable. So if any of you guys are issuing out invoices, QuickBooks can not only generate those invoices, but they can also, your clients can pay electronically. And QuickBooks has something called the AR aging report, which it will pull all of the outstanding invoices by customer, and will let you know if those invoices are over 30 days, or if they current 30, 90 days, all of that, right? So that's like the data that you need to keep your cash flow going. Right. So we're about to wrap up. So as far as we talked a lot about the bookkeeping, so let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. I want to start with you. How do you invest in yourself?
I invest in myself, first of all, by having I have a close relationship with the Lord. I'll just be honest, Miss Sonia. So I'm very adamant about reading Proverbs and asking God for direction. Number one. Number two, I try to have good, solid mentors, such as my sister, people who've been entrepreneurs, to pour into me, and I listen, such as yourself. And then number three, continuing education. I'm always listening to like podcasts such as this. I go to training and that kind of thing just to make sure that I'm keeping up on current trends in the industry. So that's how I would say I invest in myself.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And how do you invest in your business?
Very similar. I think if I invest in me, then I'm helping to make sure that I hire the right talent, and that also I believe in professional development to make sure that they're sharp. So I just say, I don't think we're ever too young or old to learn. I am a forever learner, so I love information and I love pouring into people. And I think that it's just a
Mhm.
cycle. If I pour into them, they pour into the clients, and it just kind of keeps going over and over. So that's what I do. I just really try to love them, teach them, and help them to reach their dreams. If they want to become entrepreneurs or what have you. So a lot of learning, continuing education, professional development.
I love it. I love it. Like the teacher in me is just who you just made my day, right? You can never get enough education as far as I'm concerned. You just can never get enough, right? And then as an entrepreneur, because we wear so many hats, right? You need to know just a little bit about every facet to be dangerous.
I
That's
totally
all.
agree. And I'll say too, you talk about investing back. One thing that I'm trying to implement, and I started this year, Miss Tanya, is I go to the beach. I try to go at least a month. My goal is to go 6 months out of a year to really just because that's when I can hear so clearly when I'm hearing that water, and really just trying to look back at, well, what have we done really good, and what do we need to work on, and what do we need to do new. I'm still at a
Mhm.
point of I'm kind of at a fork in the road. When do I come out of my professional job? Retirement
Right.
is not too far down the line. So, you think about all those things. How do I build the benefits of my right now? I'm still a small business. And most of my so I'm
Mhm.
not really offering benefits, but that's a whole nother realm of what I'm thinking about. And if we really just launch out and I expand, we have to think about all of those things and count the cost. So that's what
Mhm.
I have time to when I go to the beach or when I just get away to myself to reflect on.
I love that. I love that. And rest is so important and just think time, right? And that's one of the things that I'm working on because we can get so, inundated in client work and I have staff and checking in with them every week that I need time just to think, right? And that's different from rest. Right. I'm learning that too. So, yeah, it's really important as an entrepreneur. You got to know what you need, right? And don't be afraid to, get the things that you need because your business is going to benefit from it, right? So, Miss Anthony, it has been real today. I really appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your heart and for serving entrepreneurs and just sharing your story here on the podcast. So I'm going to ask this last question that I asked to all of my guests. So Miss Anthony is a 16-year veteran in the entrepreneurial space. So for all the startups that are out there, they may be businesses like me, almost going into year 5, and they're just like, they hear your story, they're getting inspired. But the question is, Miss Anthony, why is it so important to know your numbers in your business?
If you want to be sustainable, you have to know your number. It's crucial, like you said, Miss Sonia, to meet payroll. I am very intentional about making sure that my folks get paid on time, and I pay every week. And some people would dare not do that, but um, in this space, I think I've been able to retain some really good folks by doing that. So I have to make sure that I'm on top of things. I have to make sure that my cash flow is right. So it's extremely important um, to, and I'd say also before going into a business, just make sure that you have some cash set aside, really. Don't just rely on a loan or a line of credit.
Mhm.
Again, plan, do a business plan, and really try to account for um, even things that you don't think might come up.
Right.
So, so I would just say, you can do it. It's definitely doable, but definitely count the cost and know what you're getting into.
I love it. So you heard it here from Miss Anthony, right? Especially with the payroll, which whoo, child, right? I don't know if you read that book, Leaders Eat Last. That's all I be thinking about, especially with my payroll. I'm like you, Miss Anthony. Ain't nobody getting nothing until payroll is completed. Nobody gets anything, not even me.
It's tough, and another thing, time management. That's something else.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want to float, but you got to make sure you stay on top of getting those invoices out in a timely manner. I've had some of my clients say, "Why do you bill so frequently?" And I'm like, "Hey, it's in our agreement. You got the services, and I want to make sure that I'm paying my folks on time. So I need to be paid on time." And so that's all part of it. And yeah, but payroll, that's our usually our highest line item. And but it is doable. It is doable, and I iron sharpens iron. So I appreciate all that you poured into me, Miss Sonia. I say keep doing what you're doing, y'all. This is a blessing to get this information free. So bless you. God bless you a hundredfold. You and your business, Miss Sonia. And just keep doing it. And if there's anything that I can do to help, I was a little nervous, so y'all forgive me. But if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm absolutely here to do just that.
I love it. I appreciate your partnership. So, y'all, thank you for tuning in to the From Chaos to Clarity Unleash Your Business Potential podcast. I'm your host, Sonja Jones, and we will catch you on the next episode. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in to the From Chaos to Clarity Unleash Your Business Potential podcast. Again, my name is Sonja Jones, GIP Financials, your Mr. Miyagi of Monday. And look, if you learned something from this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Make sure that you like, that you subscribe. If you have some little nuggets, add some comments to the comment section of this podcast. But most importantly, I want you to share with your fellow entrepreneurs. We want to share this good old fundamental business finance education so you can have the tools necessary to know your numbers and grow your business. All right. Take care, y'all. Catch you on the next episode.